Welcome to this session where we talk about exciting new opportunities for our partner community. Topic today, of course, is artificial intelligence, and more specifically, generative AI. Now, in March 2023, we introduced you to Dynamics 365 Copilot, the world's first AI-powered assistant across ERP and CRM. And in Business Central, Copilot initially had just one skill: marketing text suggestions. Giving our customers that boost of creativity by drafting compelling product descriptions that help them bring their products to market faster. Now, our vision for Copilot has really gone well beyond that. We always wanted to unlock this new wave of productivity for workers across all roles, across all lines of business, across all industries and geographies, and really help them perform their day-to-day tasks in a more efficient way. And we couldn't achieve that vision without your help, our partner community. So we're excited to introduce new tools, in fact, a whole new toolkit for you to give Copilot and Business Central new skills, new capabilities, and include those with your extensions. Copilot is built on Microsoft's comprehensive approach to privacy, security, compliance, and responsible AI, so it was only natural that we'd empower you as well to build responsibly. My name is Mike Borch-Cardano. I'm a product manager at Microsoft. And today, by the end of the session, you will be ready to start implementing your first generative AI feature in AL and in Visual Studio Code. Now, this session is ideal for developers, but there's also plenty of tips for designers, product owners, even consultants, basically anyone who wants to understand what are these new tools in our toolbox and how do we go and apply them. So with the help of my colleagues, I'm going to walk you through a couple of things. First, a simple example that illustrates how the developer tools can bring a scenario, a use case to life. We'll then break it down. We'll focus on two major aspects, two major components of this toolkit. One, delivering a great user experience, but two, working with Azure OpenAI Service. We'll share some of the other benefits you get by building on top of this platform. And finally, we'll share insights into how you can build AI responsibly to ensure the safety of your customer and their data. So before we dive in, let's just take a moment to understand why we're bringing this set of developer tools to you, our partner community. So first of all, from a lot of feedback you've given us, we understand that you need a quick way to bring your ideas to life, right? So you can, with least amount of code, get that use case up and running so that you can play around with your prompts. That, after all, is the challenge with working with AI, which is how do you engineer your prompts? So we're trying to create a system around that where we give you all these freebies, all these goodies that help that scenario come alive, and you can focus on prompts, build that proof of concept, work and evolve it really quickly. The next thing is, we recognize that once our partners start building generative AI experiences, if you take any given customer, they're going to end up with multiple extensions from potentially different partners, and each of those are going to have a different user experience. So we thought, how can we inspire the trust of our customers here? So we're going for consistency of experience to make sure that everybody builds in a consistent way, and our customer administrators and end users have a very familiar and similar way to work with generative AI. And as we built our first few generative AI features ourselves, we started to recognize the importance of building responsibly, of applying ethical AI. So we want to share those guardrails that we have built with you. So you have a great starting point, but of course you'd still need to go and invest further in understanding how can you build responsibly. Now, all of this equates to one thing, which is that allows you to bring your product to market more quickly, so you can compete in your industry, in your local geography, more effectively. And after all, we do know that our customers, even in the SMB space, are becoming more and more interested in how generative AI can help them be more productive. Let's talk through a couple of details here as well as we enter this. So what is this intended for? What is the developer tools intended to address? So first of all, this is designed for Business Central Online, what we often refer to as SaaS. In terms of AI, this is also very much designed for generative AI using Azure OpenAI Service. The idea is to assist the human in solving some complex cognitive tasks. And this is an important point, assist the human. So we're not building autopilots that automatically do a whole bunch of things outside of humans' control. Here we're putting humans in control. And that is exactly the interaction mode that we've built as well. This is intended for non-conversational experiences. What do I mean by that? This means that you're looking at integrating this functionality into your business capabilities. They have concrete input and output, and a human is there to review that output before it gets committed. So this is not a toolkit for you to build chatbots and chat-like experiences. Now, what's in the box? What is in this toolkit? So a couple of different components. We'll talk about them in more detail, of course. A signature Copilot user experience, along with an AI module to help you interact with Azure OpenAI Service. We have plenty of guides and samples to help you get started, but also some common functions in terms of administration, telemetry, and other things to help you and your customers manage generative AI. When will this be available is always the question. So let's tackle that. You can get hands-on right now. If you're an insider using Insider Builds, you already have access to the toolkit today, which means you can compile, run, and test your generative AI features offline. Now, throughout the wave, 2023 release wave 2, we're going to publish a minor update that will include the toolkit as well. What this means concretely is that you will now also be able to deploy, test, run, demo your code to Business Central Online. This also means you can prepare your app for AppSource, and you can also deploy this to your customers as well. So now we're ready to dive into an example use case which just illustrates how you can use the toolkit in a very simple way. Think of any project you work on, right? You have a project plan. It's a breakdown of tasks that are important to complete that project. And if you track projects in BC, that's called jobs, and there's a whole jobs module built around it. But you also know that how time-consuming it is to define a one-off project plan and break that down. There's a lot of data entry there. So this sounds like a great fit for AI, for generative AI, in terms of using large language models, understanding of the world knowledge, simple problem solving, but also the ability to apply creativity and generate a project plan. So let's start out in the jobs list here. And the first thing we're going to do is use the new action to draft a project plan, a job with Copilot. And this brings up the dialog where I can now interact with Copilot. And the first thing I'm going to do, of course, is enter a few keywords which explain what the project is all about. There's a simple prompt where I explain that we'd like to furnish an office with some particular products in there. And now I'll call upon Copilot to actually generate a project plan, a breakdown of this for a particular job. Here you can see, this beautiful experience as Copilot is thinking, is generating, and it's already done. It's applied a touch of creativity to come up with a whole bunch of suggested tasks that make up this job. At the very top, you can see how it's already pre-filled a couple of different fields which explain and describe the job as well. So there's a ton of content in here that's really good for me to get started. But if I'd like to redo that by adjusting maybe some of the parameters, then I'd go back down to the prompt again, just to make a small edit. Let's just switch, for example, 40 to a different number, to 80. Let's change some of the quantities here. And as I ask Copilot to regenerate this content, those will be taken into account, and a new project plan will be drafted based on that. And there it is. Now, here, of course, I can review some of this content. I've got that job structure split into tasks. Notice how much information is actually filled in here and drafted by Copilot. What a great starting point. And once I'm comfortable with this information, I can choose to discard it or keep it. Now, keep it tells Business Central that I want to register this in the database. I do want to store this into the database. And what I can do from this point forward, of course, is rest upon Business Central's standard functionality to work with jobs, to modify this further and just take it through the last mile and finalize my job, allocating any additional resources or fine-tuning some of this information here. So what a great and simple experience where we illustrate putting generative AI to work inside Business Central. Now, next, we're going to break this down, and we're going to start by looking at the user experience. And for that, I'd like to invite my colleague, Cody.
Thanks, Mike. I'm Cody Hoover, an engineer at Microsoft, working on this new experience that we'll be showing you today. So first, let's revisit that experience that we just walked through and how we started with this action in the command bar. There's nothing particularly special about this other than this new image property option that's available to you called Sparkle. This Sparkle should be used across the different Copilot experiences that you're building, and that'll give that consistency for our users to let them understand that this will be an intelligent Copilot-powered experience. The action itself doesn't do anything special. It just calls a page with page run modal, and that page will be where most of the magic happens. So if we zoom back out, as soon as we invoke that action, the user sees this new prompt dialog page type that we've been talking about and that we just saw, where the user is able to type in a natural language exactly what it is that they're looking for and let Copilot do the rest. Let's take a look at the code that defines this experience. This is a page defined as any other, but I want to focus on these three properties here. The first is the page type property, where we've added a new prompt dialog value. With this, you get all of the responsible AI and other parts of the experience that are important for consistency across the different Copilot experiences. It's also important to point out that these are required to not be extensible. We want to make sure that other partners aren't interfering with your own experience so that customers can really trust the output that they're getting here. Also, I want to point out that we're using this isPreview equals true property that's new, specific for this page type, and I'll let Mike describe when you might want to use that and when you're ready to remove it.
Thanks, Cody. Well, we appreciate that we're all still learning how to apply generative AI in a business context. So we really want to empower you to start small and grow from there, and use the preview badge on this dialog to really communicate to your customers that you're still in that stage where you can bring your features to market faster and then collect feedback. In fact, we advise that most generative AI features do start their life out as a preview where you can learn and grow, and then eventually work towards making that generally available as well.
Great, thanks, Mike. And now that we've looked at sort of the page itself, let's take a little deeper look into the content that appears on the page. So for example, this input where the user could type that information. As you would define the content on a normal page, you do that within a layout area. But for the prompt dialog, we've added a new prompt area, just like a fact box or the role center areas, but this one is specific to the prompt dialog. Now here we've chosen to add just a single field that allows the user to type in what we would call unstructured data. They're able to write in natural language that makes sense to them, their goals for this experience. You could put anything you want here, such as additional fields, groups, or parts, to provide a more structured input, but in this case, this is exactly what we want. Once the user has provided that experience, they want to do the actual generate action. They want to get the output. So when they invoke that, the platform will call this new system action called generate in a new area called system actions. Now, this new AL construct allows the platform to provide some specific actions to you as an AL developer that you can provide some limited control over. So in this case, we control where to put it, and this allows us to do the orchestration between the different UI parts and behaviors that you've seen, and you still get to decide how that magic sauce of the generation happens. So after you've done that, the user invokes the generate, and they get this great, beautiful progress bar that will appear across all of the prompt dialogues. And what's great about this is this doesn't require any work from you as an AL developer. You don't need to choose when to start and stop your own progress dialog. We'll do this for you by default. And in fact, we even allow cancellation of this in case the Azure OpenAI services take longer than the user expects to generate, and once again, with no work from you. However, if you do want to override the text that's shown here, you can use the progress dialog APIs that you're familiar with to control that text. There's nothing new there. And then when that's completed, the user will see this output. This is where the normal content area that you would use on most pages comes into play. And once again, this can contain anything that you might put on a card or document page. And in this case, we've chosen fields and parts. This is a very structured output, but you could also imagine this being a more unstructured natural language output as well. For example, as you might see in our other video about marketing text. One thing I do want to call your attention to here is up in the header, the caption of the page here has changed. It doesn't say the page caption that sort of describes what this is, but instead we're using the data caption expression to show the user's natural language prompt input here. The idea here being that we want this to look, to reflect the user's request and be able to connect that visually with the output. So this is one technique that we recommend to bring that and make that more natural for the user. And once the user reviews this output and they're satisfied with it or not, they're going to communicate that result to you as a developer by clicking on this keep it or discard it or OK cancel button like you might see in a task dialog. Now there's no additional constructs needed for you to act on this. You simply use the onQuery close page trigger that you're used to, again from task dialogs, or you can use the value returned from the page.run modal. In this case, that is all that's needed. Now, you may decide that keep it or discard it is not the way that you want to communicate this for your scenario. So back in the system action area, there are additional OK cancel system actions that allow you to override those captions. Now, they don't take triggers because we want to keep the code for that centralized without adding too many ways to accomplish the same task. So here you purely provide a caption and a tooltip and leave the onQuery close page trigger as your way of choosing to keep or discard it. Now, the user, as we saw before, may want to edit the prompt that they've given before they keep or discard this output by going up to that the corner of the page and choosing to edit it. And that is, again, purely handled by the platform. By using this prompt dialog page type and by using the prompt in the content areas, the platform is able to keep this experience for you in a way that we hope is a lot more natural than, for example, navigate pages. Once the user has edited that text and regenerated, again, no work needed on your part for this sort of orchestration and transition between the parts. However, there are some additional features that you can use to take this even to another level. And for that, I want to reference a feature from the marketing text, feature that you can see another video on. So here, once the user has made a description, generated a entity text description, a marketing text description, they may want to get multiple versions of this, multiple iterations. So there is a way to add a regenerate button down in the command bar. This is, again, a new system action called regenerate that will light up if you add this to your system action area. Now, in the examples we've shown you so far, the input area has been, or that prompt area has been the set of facts, all of the main information needed to drive the output. But there are some additional knobs that you may want to offer to users that don't influence the facts that go into the output, but that may change, for example, the tone or the format. These can be made available both in that prompt area and in the content area by using the prompt options area, which is a new area added to the prompt dialog page. These should be option fields, and they'll appear as drop-downs down in the footer, allowing users to tweak the generation process. And that might make sense for your scenario. Now, after the user has gone through this, made some of these tweaks, done multiple generations, they may feel that one of the previous versions was better for them. So you can also expose that history to the user, allowing them to traverse through multiple iterations by adding a source table to your page. So whereas some pages will use a source table to iterate through records in a list, here we're using the source table to show different versions of the generated output. And of course, it's important to note that these tables should be temporary because we want the user to have to confirm that they're ready to accept the output, and we don't want accidental commits. Next, there may be scenarios where you want to get input from a file rather than forcing the user to type something, in which case we have, again, another system action called attach, which will make this paperclip icon appear in the footer. Here, you can use the file upload APIs that you're used to prompt the user to upload a file, and then you'll be able to use that in your Copilot generation in a way that, again, makes sense for your scenario. And finally, you may decide that you already have the information you need to jump directly into generation. In that case, you can control how the page opens in, for example, the onOpenPage trigger by setting the prompt mode on the page directly to generate. When this is done, the page will immediately call your generate action and go directly to this loading state. And then after the generation is complete, it will show the generated output. And that's just an overview of the prompt dialog page capabilities. And now I'll pass it over to Derek to tell you about the AL module that will allow you to do this Copilot generation yourself.
Thanks, Cody, for showing us how to build the prompt dialog. Next up, I'll be showing you how to build using the AI module, or the nitty-gritty bits underneath that prompt dialog. So what I'll go through is the overview of the module, kind of building your experience with it, and talking a little bit about the optional parameters that you can call with the module, the models. So let's get into it. So the overview of the module. So it supports the Azure OpenAI service, so specifically the LLMs like text, chat, and embeddings. So it does not allow image generation using like DALL-E or transcribing text, speech to text with Whisper. It also allows you to control and view the Copilot capabilities within your environment, which Mike will talk about later on. And also gives you telemetry. So all this telemetry allows you to track a capabilities, usage, registration, errors, and what other details that you actually need. So the module is in the system application, and all the objects within this toolkit can be found within the system.ai namespace. So coming to the prerequisites of using this module. You need your Azure OpenAI resource URL. So this is an example of the URL where you replace resource name with what your resource name is actually called. Then you have a deployment name, which will symbolize the model that you're actually using. In this case, I have it called MyGPT 3.5. You would have a different name for yours. And finally, you would have the Azure OpenAI API key. And I have a link at the bottom. It's where you can go and apply to get access to the Azure OpenAI service. So let's talk a bit about the module's objects. So within this module, these are some common objects, specifically for just Copilot in general, so not the generation bits. Here we have a public code unit and 2 enums. So the Copilot capability code unit, what it actually has is functions for you to register your capability, modify, or if you want to get rid of it, you can unregister it as well. You can also check if it's been registered and whether it is active or not, as an admin could disable the capability. Within the Copilot availability enum, there are 2 states, whether your capability is in preview or it's generally available. And finally, the other enum is the Copilot capability enum. And in this case, this is where you have to extend this enum to put your capability in. And let me explain a little more about that. So for example here, I have extension A that has extended the enum to add capability 1. So in this case now, Extension A registers capability 1 into the Copilot capabilities, and then does its generation and whatnot. This is all great. In the case now, there is extension B. It doesn't extend the enum and tries to use the capability 1. However, it doesn't register it with the Copilot capabilities. And in such a case, when extension B actually tries to do any generation, this will fail. Extension B can use capability 1 only if it registers it as well. So kind of small recap about that is that each extension must register with the Copilot capability code unit for the enum. Otherwise, an error will be thrown that the capability enum is not used or is not registered with the extensions that is using it. So let's get into the AI, the Azure OpenAI objects. So these are the common objects, the Azure OpenAI, the Azure OpenAI operation response, and the model type. However, we have more than that. Specifically for text completions, we have the Azure OpenAI text completion parameters. These are optional parameters that can be modified for generation. And also chat completions, where you have the Azure OpenAI chat messages, Azure OpenAI chat completion parameters. Similarly, for the text, these two are almost the same, except they have different parameters. And the Azure OpenAI chat roles. One might be asking, embeddings, it is supported, but why is there no object for it? It is just that there is no specific object for embeddings. In this case of like optional parameters, embeddings does not have any optional parameters. So let's get into each of these objects. So with the Azure OpenAI object, you can check whether Azure OpenAI is enabled for your environment. You can set the authorization, and in this case, you'll be setting the resource URL, the deployment name, and API key, which I'll get into further details later. You can set the Copilot capability that you'll be using with the generations. And then there are the generate text completion, generate embeddings, and generate chat completion. So you might want to take a note here where text completion and embeddings do return values. So in this case of text completion, it returns a text, and this is the exact output that you would expect from the generation. However, if you were to use the Azure OpenAI operation response, as I would show you here, you're also able to get the result. However, this result is actually a JSON of what was returned. So that is a minor note you want to keep note of. And for example, with the embeddings, get result here actually returns you a JSON list and not a list of decimals. So with the operation response, as I mentioned, you can get a result. You can check if it's successful, a successful run. If it errored out, you might want to check what was the status code of the call and get what was the actual error that came through. And for the enum of the model type, as I mentioned, we support 3: embeddings, text completions, and chat completions. So if we now look at the text completion parameters, this supports, for example, set max tokens, set temperature, set presence penalty. They're also the getters for these methods, and there are many more that you can modify for your generation. And we then go towards the chat completions. Now there's the chat messages object. So we have the first one being the set primary system message. And this is important to note, as this is where you would want to set your meta prompt. And we recommend that you bring your own meta prompt, which is specific to your capability. I'll talk a little more about that in a little bit. You can set how long the history length of the messages you would like. You can add additional system messages, assistant messages, and user messages. The key thing to note is that when you set a primary system message, it will always be included regardless of the length that you specify. So for example, if you specify a length of 5, one of those 5 will always be the primary system message, and then we will take the last 4 messages that you add in the list. Similarly, for the chat completion parameters, this is the same as the text completion parameters. The only difference is that it might have more or less parameters depending on the Azure OpenAI service. And lastly, for the chat roles, there are only 3 roles right now. There's the user role, the system role, and the assistant. The user is basically when the end user inputs something, you'll want to use the add user. For the system, you're treating it as a meta prompt or guiding the system in some way. And the assistant is basically the model returning you some kind of output. So let's register a capability. So as I had mentioned, first you need to extend the Copilot capability, and here I've extended it with draft a job, so kind of following in line with what Cody had shown us. And you will want to have an install code unit that will register this capability. So I'll dive in specifically to the register capability function. So here it is. What you want to do is first check, has this capability been registered with this extension? So when you call this capability, call this function, you only need to put in the enum that you'll be using, and it will automatically take up what extension is calling it. So we'll be able to then check, hey, has your extension and this enum been registered? And if it has not, then you'll want to register your capability. So you put in the capability you want to register, what the availability is. In this case, I'm making it generally available, and a little more URL, as this will surface within the admin page whenever an admin wants to take a closer look at, hey, what does this capability actually do? So let's go on to setting up your authorization. But just before setting it up, you might want to save this in some way. So as I had mentioned earlier in the prerequisites, these are 3 keys that you would have for using this module. So the resource URL, your deployment name, and your API key. So how do you go about saving your authorization, and what do we recommend? There are 2 ways of doing it. One is via isolated storage or using Key Vault. So if you go down the isolated storage way, you'll want to create a page such that you can then key it in manually and save it into isolated storage, as you do not want to hardcode any keys, etc. in your extension. The other way, if you're building an AppSource app, is to use the AppSource Key Vault that you have and save it in there. So in this case, for this demo, we'll be using isolated storage. And here, my set authorization is basically going to set the authorization being used for this generation. So here, I'm getting my endpoint, my deployment, and my API key. And with that, I just need to call Azure OpenAI, set authorization. I set the model type that I will be calling, as let's not forget that each deployment is a specific model. So not all models would support, say, text and chat. One might support only text or support only chat. And embedding models do not support either of those. So key distinction there. And then I put in the endpoint, deployment, and API key. So then we have our authorization set up. So now let's go into generation. So this is a very brief view of what the generation code looks like in a minimalistic form. But let's go into what that code actually is. So here's the generate code. So I had already mentioned about setting your authorization. Next, I want to set some parameters. So since I'm using the chat completion, I want to set those parameters. And how do I do that? Here, I just call the function of set max token and set temperature. So in my case, I want to use a longer token range, and because I want a structured output I'm setting the temperature to 0. And those are the only parameters that I'm changing. And once I've set those, I want to set the capability I'll be calling this with. So in this case, it's the capability that I had extended and registered, so draft a job. And next, I want to put in my meta prompt. So here, let me talk a little bit about what meta prompts are and what they should have. So your meta prompt should define the model's profile. I mean, what it does and what it cannot do. It should also define what kind of output you're expecting. For example, in my scenario, I'm expecting it to give me back some XML, which I'll show you in a moment. You should also provide examples to help guide the model to give you back what you want. And also provide additional behavioral guardrails such that it doesn't go off the rails and protects your end user, which Mike will talk a little bit about at the end about responsible AI. Here's an example of a meta prompt for this demo. So you are telling the system that you are an AI assistant in Business Central that helps the user draft project tasks in the following XML format. So I'm expecting this XML format with project, a description, some tasks, and in this case, there will be a task which has description, start date, end date, and a resource role. And then at the end, I'm telling it, hey, if a user asks you a question you don't know, say so. Now, this is only an example. It does not encompass like limitations, behavior safeguards, or examples of intended behavior, which you should do. And you can read more about it at the Azure OpenAI Service documentation. So now we go back to the code. Once I've set my meta prompt, now I want to add the actual prompt that my user has written in. And from there, I can actually call my generation now. So Azure OpenAI, generate chat completion. I put in my chat messages, my parameters that I changed, and the operation response so that I can get back whether this was successful or not. And the first thing I do is check, hey, was this successful? And in my case, when it is, I just want to get back the result from the last message. And it would just be the XML format. And I can just return that and do some post-processing of that XML after that. So now talk a little bit about the optional parameters. So as I had mentioned, it's only supported for chat and text, as embeddings does not have any optional parameters at this time. It's used to control the models. So for example, with temperature, whether you want a structured output or non-structured, where structured is basically 0, as I had shown, because I want an XML format. I can increase the amount of tokens I want to use. So if I know I want something that's to be short, I shouldn't use I should set my max tokens to be short, such that the model doesn't end up generating more than it should. Then there's like presence penalty and many more that you can look at the documentation. However, I also like to mention that not all parameters are supported. For example, n. And n is basically the number of generations that the model should return. Where if it's selected, like say n equals 3, instead of it just returning one response, it will return 3 responses at the same time and let you select it. However, this is not supported. And lastly, I would just like to mention, if you think our AI module is missing any features, is that this module is on GitHub. It's part of the system application layer. So you'll be able to go there, ping us, create a pull request, and then let's get that in. All right, Mike, can you tell us more about the administration page?
Thanks, Derek. So one benefit of registering your capability with Business Central is that it allows you to plug into this administrative backbone that Business Central offers to our customers. And we believe that customers should remain in control of their data and of their AI experiences. So here we have the new Copilot and AI capabilities page. This is intended for admins, and it serves really 2 purposes. First is providing transparency, and secondly is providing control. Let me walk you through that. So any features that you've registered will show up here. This page includes features from Microsoft, from partner add-ons, from any customizations, custom PTEs that have been deployed to this environment. And we'll also split them by those that are in preview versus those that are generally available. Now, those capabilities also always start off as active, but we've given administrators control to actually deactivate a feature of their choosing. Now, when they do that, we actually ask for a little bit more information from that admin. Hey, why are you actually deactivating this feature? This is information we capture and we share with you as the partner developer for this feature as well, to understand why are customers deactivating that capability. So here we're providing discoverability of your capabilities to those admins, but also let's talk about control next. We talked about deactivating, but there's actually more. So one of the things that is super interesting is how does a customer govern their data and access to Azure OpenAI Service? So if a customer is in a geography, in a region where they have Azure OpenAI Service deployed, then there is no additional setup they need to do to start using Copilot. How fantastic is that? We've eliminated all of that friction to get started. However, there's going to be cases where, as a customer, you're in a region where you don't have Azure OpenAI Service. So what does the experience look like there? In that case, admins will need to do a one-time opt-in to basically consent to having Business Central contact that Azure OpenAI Service outside of their regions. So we always advise that our customer admins, they review privacy, they understand the implications and compliance of this before making this choice. But once they hit that switch, essentially now Copilot is ready to operate and all of the features here are able to start functioning within that organization. Now, there's also a number of cases where we have automatically opted in that particular customer, but admins can also opt out from this very same switch over here. Now, all of these three cases, right? You've got Azure OpenAI Service within your region, you've got Azure OpenAI Service out of your region where you must give consent, and then this third case where in some cases we will auto-opt you in, admin can opt out. Those three cases apply to all of Microsoft's Copilot capabilities and to your capabilities as well. So the assumption here is that you have deployed your models also to the same regions as well. Now, we're going to continue working on this over time to figure out how we can give you more control over the situation when you want to break free from that and also have your Azure OpenAI Service endpoints in different regions. Note also here that there is no master kill switch for Copilot. Copilot is now on by default. It's available by default as part of Business Central. It's an integral part of Business Central. Now, a lot of that in putting customers in control is all about responsible AI. So I want to take a few moments to talk about what this is. Microsoft's been investing in ethical AI for years, actually. And we've come up with these principles which we hold very dear to our heart and we think are very important to reflect also in the extensions that you build. These principles include fairness, reliability and safety, privacy and security, inclusiveness, transparency, and accountability. And we believe in these so much that we've actually shared a lot of these principles, guidelines, and material that will help you even assess your own features against these kind of principles. And all of that material you'll find at aka.ms/RAI. Now, I do want to dive into two particular cases here, starting with transparency. There's a lot of things that the toolkit provides out of the box for being transparent that there is AI at work here. For example, the disclaimer on every single output screen in the prompt dialog, which says AI-generated content may be incorrect. Right? That disclaimer will always show up there. You don't need to add it yourselves. Now, why is that really important? Well, it is because AI can sometimes be incorrect. So especially in cases where you have a use case which is very creative, shall we say, it has to produce some text. There are risks there around that containing fabrication, so things that are not real, not true. There are cases where that, for example, could even produce harmful content. It could include content that is offensive potentially. So we do want to make sure that customers understand that this is AI generated and that they also should review that material. As Cody showed earlier, we've produced the entire prompt dialogue experience around the fact that there's some kind of input that the user provides, then there's output that the user reviews, and only when they choose keep it do they actually commit it to the system. That's the AI disclaimer, but there's more things as well that you should consider as you build your capabilities. For example, definitely use various signals to imply that this is AI at work. Use the new Sparkle action image on your action that opens up that Copilot dialog. Use words like draft, generate, suggest, Copilot. All of these help land that signal that there's AI at work. And finally, provide documentation that gives your customers that transparency about what's going on behind the scenes. Ultimately, we need them to trust this technology that you have used and utilized in your extensions, and we need to help them understand the implications to their data and as they work with the system, what this means. Let's talk about reliability and safety. So one of the things that you get for free, shall we say, by using this toolkit is user feedback, end user feedback, through the prompt dialog. Here we have the users have the ability to like or dislike and even provide a reason for that as well. This becomes something you can monitor in your App Insights telemetry and in Power BI to make sure that the quality of output for AI, because AI isn't always correct, that is something you can monitor and act upon to improve the quality of your features. Along with that, we know that our partners also want to have insights into what is usage like, what is adoption like in different regions. So we also provide you with that telemetry signal so you can understand how is your feature being used. And finally, as Derek explained as well, when you design your prompt and you engineer your prompt, you want to think about how can you build into that additional safety mechanisms that could be meta prompts, or could also be things like content filtering, especially in those use cases which are more of a creative case, like creating a job project breakdown there again. So that would be a good case where you want to apply additional code and thought process to how can you make that absolutely safe. Now, this is an area we know that our partners would like some more assistance with, so we're actively working right now on how can we provide additional safeties ourselves through the toolkit. You'll hear about that more later on. All right, so before we close, let's just summarize everything we heard today. We've got new developer tools to build Copilot capabilities in Business Central. They're available already right now with insider builds. Here we focused on generative AI, specifically with Azure OpenAI Service. It comes with a whole bunch of goodies, including that signature Copilot experience, which we know will deliver that wow experience to your customers. And this is designed for Business Central Online. Couple of resources to leave you with, so you can proceed from here and start writing your code. So first of all, as Derek mentioned, make sure you get your Azure OpenAI key. Go to aka.ms/OAI apply. Secondly, we've taken a whole bunch of documentation and guidelines that I mentioned earlier. You'll find them at this link here as well, aka.ms/BC Start Coding with AI Learn. All right, if you still have a bit more time and you're looking for inspiration, we've got 2 Copilot capabilities in the box with Business Central. So go check out the dedicated sessions where we deep dive into each one: marketing text suggestions and bank account reconciliation assistance. There's, of course, plenty more resources if you're looking to engage with the product team, if you're looking to learn about Business Central or follow that buzz on social media. Here are some links you can use. And I also want to call out this one in particular, which is especially for our partners who want to get involved with AI, join our Yammer discussion group specifically for Copilot and AI. And also, as you come up with those great ideas, if you'd like to share them with the world, share your screenshots of how you're putting this toolkit to work and hashtag #MSDYN365BC. Like that, you can share your ideas with the world and we'd love to see them. So with that, I'd like to thank you for spending time with us. We hope that you found this useful and that you can start building your generative AI experiences. We're so looking forward to hearing your feedback. So on behalf of the team here, thank you for your time.